wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being may boast in the presence of God. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this preaching opportunity. We thank you, Lord, how you have just manifested yourself all throughout this service, oh God. Yes. From our Sunday school, oh God, to our worship and praise and songs, oh God. And now, Lord, we're asking that as your word, the most important part, Lord, yes, just let it fall fresh upon the hearts of your people. Oh God, we ask that you just allow me to be minimized and for you to be elevated in every way possible. Yes. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. Can God use, or God can use even you, only if you're. And I left the end open just for you to start contemplating in your mind what that only is for you. Amen? So God can use even you. Amen. So, I don't know about you, but I've had many disappointments, even from childhood. You know, when you were allowed to go outside, and you know, you're with your friends and they're forming teams to compete, and you're in a circle and you're just waiting anxiously because you know your name is going to be picked so you can be on that winning team for kickball and dodgeball and whatever game happened to be played that day. Well, there were some times when I was not the first draft pick, not the second draft pick. How about the third or the fourth? And I'm just waiting patiently for my name to be called because I've been practicing kicking that ball and I just know exactly what I have to do to win. And then your name is the last name called. That's a very defeating feeling. Has anyone here ever been called last for anything? Amen? Yeah. But it just didn't stop there. When I got into high school and, you know, I'm thinking, okay, it's all about me, I got it going on, I'm going to try out for the cheerleading squad. Some stiff competition. Some very exclusive coordination of clubs, you know, you just have to have all the moves right and the cartwheel and the split and all that stuff. I really didn't have the split down. But I was real close. And the day that the names are announced, and you go to the board near the dean's office to see your name printed, to see if you made the cut, and then you realize, I'm gonna see my name. And you just cower and just hope nobody saw you. Because you know your name is not there. So we're all in good company. Have we ever experienced anything like that?
Oh, yes.
The job that you wanted, that you thought you were best qualified for, that you didn't get. The promotion that you thought you deserved, and you weren't selected. The guy or the girl you were dating and you just knew you were doomed to be married, but no engagement came. So we can all relate to what disappointments look like when you're not chosen. And you're not selected, and you don't feel like you're worth or worthy of anything. Then we're all in good company here. I felt that way several times throughout my childhood, my middle years, and even in adulthood. Now let's consider what that looks like spiritually. Have you ever felt as though you're not God's first draft selection? That you have nothing useful to offer God's people. You have nothing tangible that is worth anything in the service to God. Have you ever felt that other choices that were made just made more sense? That people who were smarter or better looking or more gifted? If so, you are not alone. At times, we all feel hints of insecurity and self-doubt. But when God looks at us, he doesn't focus on what we can't do. He sees what he can do through us.
Amen.
In fact, sometimes the individual whom God chooses can be so surprising, not only to anybody else around, but to us ourselves. Consider Moses. He had a profound encounter with God, in which God chose him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into the freedom of his people and for his people. Moses doesn't throw his hands up and says, yes, I'm all in, God, just use me. What does Moses do? You know, like, I'm trying to stutter. I'm not the best speaker. I don't use words with more than 5 syllables. I just can't do it, God. No, that's what Moses felt in his spirit. But what did God do? God reminds Moses that even with a speech impediment, he could still be effective. Amen. God sees past Moses' anxieties, and he knows that Moses is the best choice. No one is probably more surprised than Moses. Another example, Jeremiah. When God spoke to Jeremiah to anoint him as the prophet of the nations, I'm not saying the prophet of the neighborhood. I'm talking about the prophet of the nations. Jeremiah is surprised. Immediately, he was concerned. Again, like Moses, God, I don't know how to speak, much less the people who you're asking me to speak to, they're not too friendly. But Jeremiah allowed God to use him. And the Lord reminded Jeremiah not to allow his youth or his insecurities to get the best of him. And instead, Jeremiah was to obey God with courage. Amen. All are surprised by what God calls them to do, but they still chose to answer the call. Though you may not feel as if you're the obvious choice for honoring God with your life, no one qualifies according to their own merit. God uses a responsive and a willing heart to do amazing things. Yes. The unlikely to be used by God is both astonishing and encouraging. Just those two Bible greats that we just heard of. But think about others. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a cheater. Peter had a temper and denied Christ. Noah got drunk. Elisha was suicidal. Jonah ran from God. Paul was a murderer, and he was way too religious. Gideon was insecure. Miriam was a gossiper. Martha was a worrier. Thomas was a doubter. Sarah was impatient. Elijah was moody. Rahab was a prostitute. Isaiah preached naked for 3 years. John the Baptist ate bugs. And on second thoughts, he didn't think that the Messiah who he baptized was Messiah. Jeremiah was way too emotional. Moses stuttered. Zechariah was too short. And Abraham was old. Well, I suppose out of all those cast of characters, don't you think God can use us? Amen. Amen. What kind of people does God use? Is there ever a person who was surprised that God could use them by his service? Was indeed the man from Galilee named Simon Peter. Peter was not his first name. His first name was what? Simon. Simon. Simon translated in Greek, Cephas. And the word or the meaning of his name was reed, R-E-E-D. If you ever were by the lake or the water, you know the reeds that shoot up. The winds blow and it blows the reed this way. And the wind blows that way and it moves the reed this way. very temperamental to what was going on around the environment.
Yeah.
But when God changed the name to what? Peter. Which means what?
Rock.
A rock. Can you imagine going from a reed swaying to and fro to the rock of Jesus Christ, on which what was built? The church. And what shall not prevail? The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
How God can do what He can do. So, here are the highlights. God uses ordinary people.
Yes, yes.
Isn't that a foolish thing? That He can use ordinary people? This morning we spoke in Sunday school about what Israel was expecting in a king. And what did they get? A carpenter.
Yeah.
A king. And they got a what? A carpenter. That's a foolish thing. Amen?
Amen.
But we know that God's way is what? Not our way. Common people. Peter, a fisherman. God uses persevering people. Again, let's think about Peter. That night when he was fishing all night long. I'm sorry, Julius, I have to do this. So one of my favorite pastimes is fishing. Okay, and it's very rare that I do what?
Fish.
Catch any fish. But I like to do it. And every time I drag poor Julius out, and he'll sit in the car while I'm out in the water, just reeling my reel, and up comes nothing. Same spot every time he takes me, and up comes nothing. Well, that was Peter. All night he fished, and he caught nothing. Now that's perseverance. That is perseverance. Until he listened to what Jesus said.
Yeah.
Go back out. What? I fished all night. But, nevertheless, Master, if you tell me to go back out, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And we all know what happened when he did it, right?
Yeah.
Amen. Perseverance. God uses obedient people.
Amen.
We can think again about Peter. Did he just give, no, I'm not going back out. I'm too tired. My knees hurt. My back aches. But he was obedient. And he went back out again. God uses humble people. Amen. Humble people. When Peter's life was changed, he told Jesus, "Depart from me, Jesus, because I'm a sinful man." Peter humbled before Jesus to say, "I'm not worthy of the work that you want me to do. It's not about me, Lord, it's about you." That's a humble spirit.
Yes.
See, God can use anyone and anything. And sometimes the very least of who you think is going to be effective, that's the man that God picks.
Yeah.
There was recently a story, real life, that happened, I believe, in California, no, in Texas, where there was a mass shooting, I think at one of the Walmarts. I think 22 people died. This just occurred last year. And there was a homeless man who ran into that mass destruction to save a little baby. And brought the baby to safety and went back into the building to help others.
Hallelujah.
A homeless man
Praise the name of the
with
Lord.
no medical experience was the unlikely first responder. And that didn't stop him. And later they hailed him as a hero. Stories like this remind me of how God uses ordinary people. Sometimes the greatest impact comes from the very last person we'd expect. challenging our conviction that certain qualifications and skills are necessary to be useful in society. Well, we have no excuses, do we?
No.
We don't. We can't just say, oh, I can't be used by God. I only know computers. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Or I'm just a student. Or I had a rough childhood. I don't have a college degree. Or I've made some very bad choices in my life. Church pews are filled with people who think that they're not smart enough, talented enough, or adequately trained to serve God effectively. I'm here to tell you, that's a lie.
Yeah.
God doesn't see anyone as useless. He didn't make any losers, and he didn't make any nobodies. Starting with sending his son as a baby in a manger instead of a king in a palace, God signaled a bold new way of changing the world. And aren't you glad? Aren't you glad? We can think of so many world greats. God uses those who are willing. Yes, and I know you've heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him. Okay. And there's another one. Have you ever heard that God can't steer a parked car? Amen? We have to start our engines and give God access to it. He will pass over the best and the brightest for those that are available and obedient.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
God works in our weakness. We don't feel like helpless and inadequate, but that's when we have to depend on God rather than ourselves. Paul said it best, my power is made perfect in weakness, and that's true of us today. It's never ever too late or too early to discover your purpose. Moses was 80 years old when he liberated the Israelites from bondage. Sarah and Abraham were 90 and 100 respectively when they became first-time parents. And in the covenant to create the people, we know that Sarah and Adam were instrumental. Noah was 500 years old when he started to build the ark. And the results of their action shows that God's timing is perfect.
Yeah.
Age is no impediment to being used powerfully by God. All of us have something God can use. And again, it's never too early and it's never too late to discover your purpose. All of us have something that God can use. God chooses the weak but willing, and makes us strong.
Hallelujah.
Do you feel God can call you to do something for him, for the kingdom? But do you feel worthless in doing so for your church? Do you feel that you have nothing valuable to add? Well, here's the real questions I want you to think about. Are you faithful? Are you available? And are you teachable? Let's go over that again. Are you? Are you? Are you?
Teachable.
You're hired. You're hired when it comes to God's service. Don't be disheartened if you have any reservations in answering those three questions, because God can turn any aspect of doubt completely around. There's a scripture that says, Lord, help my unbelief. God equips us who he calls. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the call. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. Let's think for a moment as I conclude about David. Y'all know anything about David? Was David a Hulk? Bible says that he was kind of on the thin side. Amen? And when Samuel came looking for the next king, and he told Jesse, bring me your fantastic children. Just line your sons up. And he brought them all out, and you know that each one, God says, no, that's not the one I want. No, that one's very handsome, but that's not the one I want. Oh, that one's built and handsome. No, that's not the one I want. And then God chose who? He chose David. David was probably 15 years old, and God told Samuel, he is the one. I have seen his heart. He is the one I will work with. He is the one to be anointed as the next king.
Hallelujah.
David was a runt, for lack of a better word, the baby in his family. He is definitely not qualified, right? Wrong. God knows who and what he wants to do his will.
Amen.
So, that is great news for us. God will use even you. You didn't have to attend an Ivy League school. You didn't have to be a graduate with cum laude. You didn't have to be the founder or the CEO of a great company. You don't have to receive any honorary degrees. You just have to be
Faithful.
And teachable.
And teachable. Now, in the beginning of our lesson, our sermon today, can you remember? God can use even you only if you're fat. Did you get it?
Yep. Faithful and beautiful.
What? No, God? What? Oh my goodness. That means God's word was received. Amen. God's word was received.
That was fat.
That was fat. Amen. Well, that is helpful for us to know that we don't have to have a sophisticated resume.
Right.
We don't have to have super impressive skills. We don't have to have tremendous intellect for God to use us. And this message is extremely important, not only because later in the service today we're going to have our election of officers.
Amen.
But because no matter what position you hold or you don't hold, there's a work that God has for you to do.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be aiming to do great work. We have to just be focused to do what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. It all makes a difference in the kingdom building that God calls us to do. So there's no reason, no excuse, no exception for us to just warm pews.
Mm.
Amen?
Amen.
And if I stepped on any toes, I'm not even going to ask for forgiveness.
No, keep stepping.
Amen? I'm not even going to apologize. Amen. Amen, sis. Amen. Did y'all hear that? All right, sis. I like that. Just keep stepping. God uses people for his glorious purpose to show his superior power.
That's right.
Do not begrudge your meekness, your weakness. Do not lament in your inefficiency or your lack of confidence. Rejoice that God is all sufficient and always dependable. Embrace where you are and what you are, and let God use each and every aspect of your being.
Amen.
So that the power of Christ can rest upon you to reveal God's surpassing greatness. Be encouraged, Christian. God intends to use you in all of your multifaceted weaknesses and obscurities for His glory. It's okay to be a nobody if in all you do, you serve somebody.
Amen.
God is good.
All the
Amen.
time. Well put, well done.
Well, that was a mouthful.
Amen.
It really was.
Yeah, that's right.
And as